Hey honey, I think I found a place that we can get Christmas parts. It looks like happyholidayparts.com.
Welcome to video 3. Today we are going to show the installation of the motor for the Department 56 London Skating Club. Hope you enjoy. This is the London Skating Club. The first thing we will do is remove the ceramic base from the top. This will allow us to work on the unit. Put it to the side. You can unscrew the bulb. This will allow you to turn over the unit and to access the screws. Have a Phillips screwdriver handy. Now, once you get the unit turned over, be careful of the lights posts. They are very easy to break off, so just be very careful. Take your Phillips screwdriver and remove the screws from the back panel. There should be 8 screws. Open the base. Be very careful not to break the light bulbs off the front of the unit. Part. You have the light bulb socket, the synchronous motor, the drive gear, and the belt and pulleys. The connection for the lights, which are going up to the base of the unit and back down into the connector. The first thing that you'll want to do is pick up your Phillips screwdriver and remove the 4 screws from the synchronous motor on the base of the unit. The screws removed from the motor, take a flat end screwdriver and lightly pry it from the plastic stems on the base of the unit. As you can see, the old motor is much thinner. Don't get alarmed. The new motor is a lot thicker, but the top of the unit has room to fit the new motor in. Now, cut the old wires off at the base of the motor to the side. Now, what we want to do is take your electrical tool and splice the wires, probably only about 1/4 of an inch. Now, don't worry about the polarity, as this is a 12-volt AC system and there is no polarity on the motor. Once you have your wires spliced, pick up the new motor. Now, remove the hardware. There should be a screw and a lock washer. You can put that to the side. Now, unravel the wires from the motor. Now, what I like to do is I like 3 methods. 1, you can solder the wires onto the old wires and use a heat shrink tubing. If you don't have heat shrink tubing, you can use electrical connector for the sizing of the wire. Or you can use this type of connector. This is the wrong size, of course, but just for visual purposes. Today we are going to heat shrink tubing over the old wire. Process is to twist the wires from the new motor onto the old motor wires on the unit. Once this is done, you can get your soldering iron, which is mine 60 watts. That's well sufficient for soldering wires. You could even use a little lower if you had to. Add solder to the wires as you see in the video. Once this is done, let them cool for a second. Trim the wires that you have soldered so they're not too long. Now, apply the heat shrink tubing over the solder part of the wires. That you have the heat shrink tubing over the wires, you will use a heat gun. Now, if you don't have a heat gun and you do pick up some heat shrink tubing, you can always use a hair dryer. Turn the unit on and apply the heat to the heat shrink tubing. Do not put the unit too close or you'll melt the wires and the heat shrink tubing. This will just allow the heat shrink tubing to shrink and keep the wires so they don't touch each other. Now that you have the heat shrink tubing on the new wires, you can remove the old pulley from the motor. You won't need the hardware from the old motor as the new motor hardware is a different size. Patch and the heat shrink tubing is applied, just lift up the unit and inspect the side. Make sure it's clear of debris and make sure that the gear has clearance from the bottom plate. Now you'll be ready to install the new motor back onto the plate. Let's lubricate the gear. When you received your kit, there should be a small tube of grease. With a Phillips screwdriver, loosen the screw. Now you don't have to take the gear all the way out of the shaft. Just lift it up slightly. This will allow you to apply a small amount of grease to the gear. Remember, less is more. You don't need a lot of grease. This will help keep the unit lubricated and running smoothly. Now, once you have applied the grease, put the screw back on with your Phillips screwdriver. Reapplying the screw onto the gear, do not over tighten, as this may snap the shaft off of the plastic base. Is back on the base of the unit. You may want to just check to make sure it is nice and loose and free. Give it a spin. If it's loose and it spins freely, you know it's been installed correctly. Now, the next step is new motor on, just take a light paper towel and clean up the area. Now remember, the gear is tapered. The flat side goes down on the shaft and the tapered side goes up. You put the lock washer on first and then the screw. Now, the gear will fit tightly. You might have to wiggle it a bit to get it onto the shaft, but it will fit. Now, remember, do not over-tighten the screw. It only has to be snug. The motor kit you see today is available from our website at www.happyholidaysparts.com. Just go to Department 56, click on London Skating Club, and you'll be able to see the motor kit. It is now back on the shaft. We can mount the motor back on the base of the unit. You will do this by applying some pressure to get it back onto the plastic studs. Once this is done, pick up your Phillips screwdriver and reattach the 4 screws onto the base of the unit. Please do not over tighten these, as you could strip the plastic holes on the mountings. Once you have the 4 screws in, as you can see, now once looking at the motor, there should be a space between the bottom of the gear and the plate, and the gears should line up quite exactly. Now, the unit came with 2 tie wraps. You don't need both, but it comes with the kit. Use one just to tie the wires so they keep out of the way from anything that you may not want them to get into, like the gears. Cut off the excess material from the tie wrap. Now, here we go. The new motor's in. The unit's running smoothly. Check the belt. The belt should be rubbery and pliable. The magnets on this unit look fairly well. Now you are ready to close the unit up. If you find that the belt is worn out, you can get it from our website at www.happyholidayparts.com. Just go to the menu, go to Department 56, and scroll down. You'll find the belt there. Use a little furniture polish and apply it to the back of the unit and apply it also to the top. This will clean the surface and make it slippery and give it kind of like a lubricant. Everyone should have furniture polish in their home. Now you can put the base and the top back together. Turn the unit over slowly and make sure the wires inside are not catching. And test the unit. Now, this is a sample unit, and it had a few broken pieces off the top. We'll fix that after. This piece here was broken when I received the unit, but a little bit of glue and we can glue it back on. Now, screw the light bulb back in, make sure it's running, and put the people on the skating surface. They should run smoothly with no jerking. Tip. Before installing the unit back together, check the connections at the resistor and also at the connector to make sure when you open the unit up, it did not loosen the solder from the joint.
At Happy Holidays Parts and Repair, where the love of Christmas is all year round. Thank you for joining us.